is going for, which is something EU has done when their opponent's on their last deck, for example. But here's the standard opener, which is red, blue, green, Malf, Brucon, Samuro. And the correct play, or what is considered the standard play for this opener, is to double target the opponent's Malfurion with your 2 casters, and then queue the Samuro last to hit it. And that might seem redundant. Even if all the damage hits, you don't kill Malfurion. So you could be saying, why do I need 2 triggers for Samuro? And that's because there is Brucon on either side, and there is the slow effect on Brucon's 4-speed skill, right? So if that slows your Malfurion, you actually lose 1 possible trigger for Samuro. And that's why you need to have that safety net of having those 2 targets before you queue the double strike last, which is what Tice is going for here.
And how much of this stuff did you work out for yourselves in your extensive playtesting, and how much of it sort of just comes through all of the other regions and yourselves all playing against each other so many times and just getting a feel for how the matchup works?
Well, I think this deck was already common on ladder before we even really submitted it. Maybe the version with Guff instead of Cookie, because Cookie was very new. So I think if you played enough Mercenaries ladder, you kind of work out for yourself. Maybe you make the mistake the first time and you're like, oh, my mouth got slowed. Now my Samuro only attacks once. But as you can see here, what happens is because both the mouths live, they do get to deal additional damage to each other, but one mouth got the slow effect after it moved, and that's the bad outcome in this situation because it might die before it gets another move off. But you should still be able to kill Malfurion on either side here, so the net effect is perhaps a little bit less damage on your other mercs.
Got you.
Again, many different plays you can go for here. You could go for just speed 1 Brucon to kill the 19 health Malfurion. That's available to Tice, but not Valeera, right? The 20 damage is not enough to kill Tice's Malfurion. But if you do the 1 speed move from Brucon, there is a speed tie you might lose against the other 1 speed Brucon. And if you lose that tie, Tice's Malfurion actually gets to heal up to 25, and the 20 damage is not enough to kill it itself. So I generally take the safe play in this spot, which is just also send the Samuro at Malfurion again.
Right, that's what I love about having watched this tournament so far. It's that it isn't RNG, but there is a little bit of element of bluff or poker or chess, whichever way you want to look at it, in that you have to take a safe option even though everything is calculable in case your opponents try to catch you out in some way or try to do something a little bit off the wall to cost you damage, and that must make the game incredibly complex and interesting to play.
Absolutely is. I mean, my brain started melting playing this too much, but it looks like Tice is going for a different line here, going after the Brucon and leaving Malfurion up. But because if your Malfurion dies, right, it means that your Brucon speed goes back up to 4 in the middle of the turn. So if you don't actually use Muddy Footing first before Samuro, you don't get the double Samuro attacks, and Tice has gotten majorly punished for that. I mean, I'll say punished with a footnote, because a lot of the times in Mercs, sometimes even if you lose 2 at once, if you are allowed to bring in, for example, a very powerful combo like Cairn and Diablo together, you can maybe pull it back. My instinct is to say that Valeera is still very much ahead here, because even if the Diablo gets to go for the big AoE, Malfurion would survive that. There is the Samuro which can kill it as well though, so this looks like it could be a very close flip between just the Samuros going at each other, although I don't quite see the speeds right now. I'm not sure if the Malfurion on Valeera's side cast the speed up spell last turn, because if it did, then he has 2 moves that can go under the endurance aura and make Tice's turn a lot less powerful.
Yeah, and so
in that case, Tice would go for an Earth Stop instead, probably.
You've probably already noticed, but I'm a little bit slow right now, but Valeera's point of view can be seen underneath Valeera, which is a new addition, I think, to the broadcast. At least I hope it is.
Yeah.
So
okay,
but
we can't see the speeds on Valeera's. They're just cut off. No!
So close! But that's an improvement at least, but yeah, we're going to have to still work with any part of your brain that is still functioning after days of Mercenary.
Yeah, no worries. Today was the one day I finally got enough sleep because we played at the beginning of the day. I was hoping that I'd spend the rest of tonight preparing for tomorrow, but alas, doesn't always work. But it looks like he did speed up, so he does get to go under Endurance Aura, and that's why we see Tice probably not go for it here. I think it's a very bad move. If there's 2 that go under it, he probably just sets up an Earth Stomp instead, or attempts to, but because of the Samuro damage, doesn't even get to. It's just killed on the spot. And Valera knows that ever since Karen was changed to have the second half of it not move if the first half died that same turn, Thais, I think, has, I want to say, almost 100% loss from this position, but of course, mistakes can still be made from either side. He can go for the speed momentum, as Tice calls it, or endurance aura this turn. But again, everything's still sped up from Valera, so it's really bad right here. He Doom charged something with the Diablo last turn, so at least one of the Mercs will be slowed. But even if you do get to, say, get 3 stomps from Diablo, it's not killing anything on its own. It's dealing 18 to Malfurion and 36 to Brucon in that case. Doesn't seem quite good enough to me.
Okay, and obviously with Cookie on the bench, Cookie just doesn't have any damage output. I've been saying that a lot. Is that actually correct? Obviously Cookie's main business is giving all your mercs health in the opener, but with Cookie on the bench, this is just the last stand for Ties, right? No more available damage if this does pan out how you're expecting.
Yeah, I mean, he'll have a live Samuro and Diablo relatively healthy depending on what Valera targets. Although I think Valera also has access to just killing Diablo here. He'll probably target the Cairn first because it's gonna taunt. So that would block the Samuro from going right after Diablo. But even if that's the case where one of Tice's green mercs or even both survive, Valera has his own Cairn Diablo in the bench, and that will 100% lock it out, in my opinion. Cookie on the bench, not great in this position. I do really like Cookie as a support merc. Like, you can bring him in to just snipe something like Karen. Very powerful, again, after the Karen nerf. But in this position, it's just not going to be good enough, in my opinion.
Okay, have you seen the latest tweet by Tian this morning? Have you had time to see that? With the list of the
I have not.
updated mercs. So the number 1 ranked merc with top 5% MMR with maxed mercs is Cookie.
Hell yeah! I'm such a Cookie fan. You know, I wanted to play 4 Cookie decks, but we couldn't do it because of the deck list restrictions. Like, we can only run 1 merc in up to 3 comps. And you can also... I mean, this is not a hard rule, but I think people quickly determined that having the 2-2-2 even color spread is too valuable in this format, where your opponents can get information. And obviously, Shadow Samuro has to run 2 blues already, so if you added Cookie to that, it kind of breaks the deck list submission. And that puzzle was so difficult to decipher. I believe that after the resubmission, there was so little time to come up with your own comp that EU and NA basically ended up copying China or APAC, probably closer to China's lineup because nobody else submitted Jaina, but we were 3 out of 4 decks the same in the first place. And it's been, I guess, the meta settled in such a way where the one decent non-Cairn Diablo deck is the one with the Sylvanas and the Anduin opener. So we are not going to see that, I assume, because everybody's been banning it.
Even in that situation, though, I think that APAC and China still had the upper hand. They had more time to practice the decks they had created for themselves rather than having to learn somebody else's decks. That's always a nice bonus. And another shout out to you, Hiji. I'm not going to keep being nice to you the whole cast, honestly. But Sylvanas has moved up to number 5 in the entire meta overall, according to that tweet earlier as well. And I'm pretty sure, so this is with Death Volley on Sylvanas. So that explains your deck. I know that China came up with the same deck, but I know for a fact you sort of did it independently. You're probably single-handedly walked the meta yourself there. Well done.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, obviously I didn't come up with the Mukla Anduin open. Oh wait, are we featuring Sylvanas? Does that mean somebody's playing the MAM deck? I call it MAM.
No, I think production, because this is done at our end rather than the China end. They're just bringing up decks, cards that we're talking about, so we can explain what you did. So what you did, what China did with the first round of submissions is they put in Death Volley and put the sash on Samuro to give the extra like the mirror images, which means that more and more things die as you go on, as well as some tokens here and there, and that allows to get your Sylvanas, as I understand it, up to a pretty massive attack value, hopefully winning, hopefully killing off opposing Anduins and things. But worst case scenario, if Sylvanas dies last, you can get a draw and just move on with your lives. In what at the time was a meta where this was your 4th deck, right? You had the 3 obvious decks, and this was like the cobbled together deck, but it has since become actually the best deck as far as I'm understanding it.
Yeah, it's so weird, right? Because we submitted before Karen was patched, and after that patch, Shadow Samaro's power level went down so hard. It's unbelievable how much that has changed. It also increased Cookie's power level, in my opinion, because he just gets to kill Karin before it endurance auras if you didn't manage to finish him off on the prior turn. And here we have that Samuro, as you were talking about with the synergy. And just to talk a little bit about how this deck came to completion, right? I think everybody, when we saw our rules, we're like, all right, we're submitting 3 Karin Diablo decks, and we have to figure out one that doesn't have it. What are the other strong comps in the meta right now? Well, I think the week before we had to submit, some of these MAM decks were cropping up on ladder. That stands for Malfurion, Anduin, Mukla. And you run the big brother on Mukla in order to have that taunt to protect your Anduin. And if you are running Cookie with this comp, you are guaranteed to survive against Shadow Samuro. Your Anduin, that is, will never die on turn 1. It is simply impossible. And if Anduin doesn't die, he simply just keeps scaling because Malfurion healing on 3, even 4 minions sometimes just gives Anduin +5 health for each minion that's healed. I keep saying minion. This is Mercs. Sorry. And then, so we thought, that's a strong comp, let's run it. But the thing is, we couldn't run several MAM decks, right? Because it's more like MAM C. You need to run Cookie to not lose to Shadow Samuro, which means that because of the no 2 decks can have more than 4 Mercs in common restriction, there's only one MAM C deck in the lineup. And that kind of tells us, okay, we know this is a strong opener with Cookie on the bench. It's 2 red, 2 blue to maintain the 2-2-2 balance that we were trying to go for. What are 2 greens that we can add here? And then I honestly think if you think hard enough on this and look at all the Mercs, right? All the green Mercs, there's not that many that are playable in the meta. You're like, okay, Samuro, that's a good one. That's some DPS. And then we run maybe Sylvanas. Does that ever work? Yeah, that's not in this comp. Does Sylvanas ever work? Because you already start off with an extra token, right? The Mukla's big brother. So that's 1 more in her pool to buff her attack. And then you can run Sash on Samuro to keep buffing it. And with that expected outcome, by the time Sylvanas comes out, if you have had Malfurion, Mukla, Big Brother, Samuro, and 2 images die in that time, that is 6 minions dead, and Sylvanas can go up to 40 instantly. Even if it's just 5 Mercs dead, she goes up to 35. And that 35 breakpoint is huge, right? Because that Death Rattle and the first attack, the Banshee Bolt, sorry, it's the 3rd attack on this graphic, is enough to one-shot a Vol'jin at 70 health. That's max Vol'jin, no Cookie. And because of that, you're able to kind of abuse the Shadow Samuro comp in such a way where, like, they're just stuck there on board dealing very low DPS because your reds are already dead. You have green and blue. And even though they're healing themselves, they're already kind of just taking up board space. They're dead because Sylvanas always threatens them. And so you can kind of like cycle out that last spot in there. And I find that this deck does that very, very effectively. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm very proud that the deck became the meta for the tournament, even though I don't think we're seeing it this series because it's just gotten banned by the other 3 regions every time.
There you go, that's something to be even more proud of in a way. I've actually enjoyed playing this deck. I think it's a very fun deck to play on the ladder. The whole series of interactions and trying to work out, in my case at least, trying to work out what's going to go where and what's going to do what. With the Sylvanas in my back pocket, just makes it feel a little bit more straightforward to me. It's a complicated deck to build, but when you see it, it's like, oh yeah, this is fun. I enjoy playing this. And so... yeah. That's something I've enjoyed immensely. Did you yesterday beat this with Shadow Sam? Was that you? Was that this lineup?
I did, yeah. Actually, yesterday we were not banning it. Today we banned it, and since we've already lost APAC, I'm just gonna say why we did that. It's because we were tired, as very, very, very tired this morning, right? Like we played last event last night and first event this morning, and I simply did not believe I had the brain power to beat the MAM deck because I think MAM does have its weaknesses in that it is very predictable with its opener, and like the way you kind of want to play is just immediately press the second button on Samuro when it comes out because you want the 2 images to die before you bring out your Sylvanas. And if you know what your opponent thinks about it, sometimes you can get the win. Obviously, it's still very unfavored for Shadow Samuro. But anyway, we have a different matchup on our hands. Tice running it up again with the Nature Samuro deck versus China's very special creation. Like, in the 4th tech slot, I think all of the regions are running some type of Varden Cairn Diablo deck with Tavish as well. It's just your choice of whether you want to run Jaina as the other blue or Cookie even. And in this case, from Windfish, Baron Geddon to get some more DPS in combination with Tavish a lot of the time. And the special thing about this lineup from Windfish that America's also copied, has the Cairn first weapon, sorry, Diablo first weapon, which buffs its attack and makes the slow effect slow you even more. And in a way, it makes sense because this opener is not very flexible, in my opinion. You have to start with these 3 mercs together in order to get the big combo of you slow one thing this turn, with Diablo, you slow all things a little bit with Varden, and most of the time that allows you to go for an Endurance Aura and Fire Stomp guaranteed for 4 procs, the exception being against Shadow Samuro and the Nature Comp, which will actually have, even if you slow the Malfurion with the Diablo, because it speeds up the Brucon, it's still going to have a speed tie versus the Endurance Aura. And that makes it such that the turn 2 is an enormous coin flip in this matchup. Because what Tice can do here is full send everything at Diablo. It will not kill it, but I believe it will put the Diablo within a range where if Tice wins the turn 2 coin flip, he can snipe the Diablo before the Endurance Aura goes off, and the entire opener from Windfish kind of falls apart.
Right, with that in mind, we are actually going to stay with the theme of mercs, and we're going to sub in off our own bench just for a bit now. And I'm pleased to welcome TJ to the broadcast. TJ, how's it going?
Hi, are we tri-casting
No,
now,
I'm going to be
what's
leaving
happening?
TJ and you together in a moment. I'm just going to
Oh,
bring
I
you both
see.
together. There you go.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lorinda. Hey, TJ. How you doing? Oh, TJ. Okay, TJ's mic is apparently muted on broadcast. Okay.
Is this? Oh wait, what's that? Is it better now? Okay.
Okay.
Just had to refresh.
Okay.
We're good. We're good.
All right. So Lorinda's taking a well-deserved break. TJ together now. Yeah. Before you came in, I was saying that Tice, if he wanted to go for preventing the Fire Stomp as a 50-50 on turn 2, could have full sent everything at Diablo, but instead he actually ended up going for the Varden, which is admittedly a line that I haven't tested. When Surrender and I played this matchup in our practice, we're like, if the Fire Stomp goes off, it feels pretty awful already. So I guess we should just take the 50-50, but I'm so curious to see if Tice can make this work. His Brucon got frozen, which is very, very unfortunate because that's the one minion that could have attempted to go for beating the Endurance Aura. It's 2 mercs that can beat the Endurance Aura because, right, Varden died, which means that the slow AoE did not happen. It's only the slow on Malfurion. And I think it's because of that Valera is deviating from the Endurance Aura play. He is going for Earth Stomp and trying to set up the big Fire Stomp for the next turn. So if Tice has that read that it's not an Endurance Aura turn, I wonder if he can punish this by, say, trying to kill Diablo. I think it's possible here. Oh no, not quite. Sorry, he cannot proc the double strike on Samuro because his Malfurion is slowed. So that's actually a pretty clever spot by Windfish.
Pretty ambitious. I'm gonna go for the Diablo anyway. What was the opening? Sorry for China.
It's the Cairn Diablo Varden, and Varden died on turn 1.
Okay, gotcha.
And the Diablo has a special weapon, which I don't know if I agree with. I feel like the attack and super slow is not super important. Because I feel like 5 slowing something with the natural ability, even without the weapon, is pretty much enough to just keep it in check for the next turn. But in a way, like if you put Diablo in the opener, you probably expect it to die before anything else, so the 3rd weapon might not make that much sense either. So I can understand where China's coming from with this deck. Anyway, now that they've gotten the Earth Stomp off, it looks like a pretty clean Endurance Aura setup.
Yeah, it seems like there's only 2 teams that are running what's called the claws with Diablo, just for the Diablo openings, just to get a little bit of value. but the Soulstone is being run the vast majority of the time since Diablo has been coming off the bench a lot more than it's been being in the openers.
Yeah, that's right. The curious thing is that you can do that opener with Varden, Diablo, Cairn, even with the Jaina Tavish deck. You don't have the weapon on Diablo, which makes it, I guess, slightly weaker in the opening, but it still beats a lot of Shadow Samurai decks. But yeah, this is a guaranteed setup from Windfish here, right? Because everything was slowed. Endurance Aura always goes first. The Fire Stomp always goes for 4 stomps, which kills the blue, kills the Malfurion, which had already been damaged, and then the Die Insects is guaranteed to crit the Samuro, and that's a full replacement for Tice to come off the bench here. Last 3 Mercs, they are quite powerful together. The Cookie, Cairn, Diablo setup can often give you 30 damage AoE because you summon a fish as well, and the Fire Stomp can go off 5 times. But let's see what Windfish can do to stop that. I believe he can do nothing because nothing is faster than Endurance Aura here. So for Tice's perspective, if he deals 30 damage AoE, is that even good here? Obviously it kills Diablo, but it just kind of scratches the Rag and the Cairn. And then the Cairn goes for another Earth Stomp. So even though Tice gets the big wombo combo, I wouldn't be comfortable in his position just yet. Maybe a fish can change some outcomes here. The Death Rattle fish can deal more damage to Windfish, 15 damage AoE. The buff fish could get Tice's minions a bit more jacked, but the heal fish is useless here.
Have you recognized all? Do you know all the fish's names and art and their effects?
No.
Okay.
I know the art and effects, but the names, the only fish I know is Windfish.
That Raven and I tried to look it up. The information exists nowhere for the art in the.
Oh, that's the
fish.
heal fish, though.
Okay.
So.
What's
Okay,
the one with
wait
the
a
pointy
second.
nose?
Pointy nose is the damage fish. That
Okay.
makes sense, right? It's like attacking you, it's poking you for 15.
And this one looks cuddly, so it's healing you. Okay, that
Yes,
makes sense.
exactly. So Tice here actually didn't end up going for the Endurance or a Wombo combo, which baffles me. I'm not really sure. Like, he can do it this next turn, but I'm not sure if that's better. Maybe. I mean, I did already say that even if he did go for the combo last turn, he's probably in a losing position because Windfish had the Rag survive, which can kill the Diablo in the backswing, and he had 2 more Mercs on the bench. So maybe Tice is trying to go for an alternate line here, something a bit riskier. But the thing is, Tavish comes off the bench, and that's a move that beats Endurance Aura, so it deletes 1 stomp from Tice's combo turn. He can still get 4 stomps, right, if Cookie adds a fish, or like even 5, right? Because there's already a fish on board. Sorry. The fish is on cooldown. So it's like 4 stomps maximum. Yeah. And that's still not killing Cairn. It's still not killing Rag. So I'm at a loss.
Yeah, I feel like he's pretty dead. And once Diablo goes down, Cairn and Cookie by themselves are not particularly good fighters. So
yeah, I don't think so. Trying to come up with any alternate lines. Like, the Cookie can also just deal 20 to one of these reds. So if we're counting up the damage, right, because Tavish is going to move first, we're counting 30 AoE. But 20 plus 30 is 3 short of killing the Cairn, which means that Windfish is guaranteed to be able to get 1 more action in, and that action will, I guess, go into the other Cairn if it's taunted. Bada bing, bada boom. Yep.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Tice looks at a loss. I don't know what went weirdly with that turn. But yeah. From this desperation positions, I've often thought about what can the bleed do here. The cool thing about the bleed is that the damage on it kind of, like, it checks at the time of casting. So if you have nature spell damage, right? Let's say you played a Brucon and you had a lightning bolt go off, the bleed will deal 8. Even if Brucon dies, I believe the bleeds will continue to deal 8 and 16 to blues because of the crit damage. But obviously it's not really viable here. The DPS is far too slow to beat this. So Windfish, I think he should focus Cookie just to be safe here. because Cookie, if something ends up at a breakpoint where Cookie can snipe it, then it can gain health. But honestly, either line is winning in my opinion, and he has the Baron Geddon in the bench, which can deal with Karen very nicely because of the typing advantage. Yep, focus is Cookie. It's dead. This is a lock. Windfish up 2-0.
Yeah, nice start there for Team China. And sorry for having to be caught up, but which lineup was it that took the win in the first round?
Yeah, no worries. They won with the nature comp in the mirror.
Okay.
Yeah. So that means that the only remaining deck for China now is the Shadow Samuro deck, which is, oh my gosh, this deck, it's so funny how it ended up for the meta in the tournament, because pre-submission, this was the strongest deck on ladder. It single-handedly was preventing so many other lineups from being viable on ladder, because you can just kill pretty much any red protector merc on turn 1. You're faster than them because you're playing Vol'jin, and it's just been a terror of the meta, right? But because of the change to Karen and the discovery that the Anduin comp can counter it pretty consistently, it's become kind of like the weakest link in a Conquest deck, in a Conquest lineup, which we know that even if you only have to win with it, it's very possible for your opponent to still sweep it. The thing is, even though if we are generous to Tice and say that he has 2 favorables versus the Shadow Samuro, he would have the mirror for the last one. So we are going to watch some very, very close matchups. If everybody starts standard opener, there's honestly a lot of coin flips. That's just how it works. But the thing is, with EU, they have been the region, I would say, that's most creative and willing to be flexible with their openers. And now they have full information what China's deck list is, because it's the last one remaining. And so they can try and beat the Shadow Samuro mirror with, say, Diablo in the open or something like that. I don't actually know if that works, but in theory, you're playing 2 greens into 2 blues. Maybe that works. Maybe they can get a juke on it. We'll see.
And if they were to go for, something creative and take a risk, now would be the time to do it for Europe being down 2-0. But taking a look at Diablo here, a little spotlight, kind of, providing context to what you were talking about a little bit in the previous match of the difference in equipment, where the Soulstone seems to be the standard equipment for a lot of the comps where Diablo is included, because he's usually coming off the bench and you have a chance to let that passive take over a few times. But the Claws of Terror does give you a little bit more power on those turn 1s, where you only have the Doom Charge available, getting that extra speed, slow, and a little bit of extra damage.
Yeah, I did bring up a while ago that I feel like the extra slow is not super relevant, because most moves, if you make them 5 speed slower and it's just for turn 1, most of the time, they're already going to be slower than Endurance Aura. So
Yep.
I'm wondering if they actually use this weapon for the attack. Like, maybe it helps some breakpoint if, say, your opponent is running Cookie. I'm not necessarily sure, but that 5 attack translates to 10 extra damage on a blue in the opener. And that would mean that your Fire Stomp is probably more likely to clear double blues. Maybe it's even better against Shadow Samuro. But the thing is, even if they're playing Shadow Samuro, there is a big flip if they decide to go for the 50-50 line on the turn 2, like Natalie versus Endurance Aura coin flip. But now we're featuring Cookie, which I'm very glad, because
Yes.
this is like one of my favorite mercs. Cookie's so fun.
Yeah, Cookie is great. Well, in my opinion, the ultimate support merc. One of the reasons I think every Cookie, right, is running the 3rd equipment, the
Right.
appetizers, which just gives your mercs that little bit of health buff. But the Go Fish fits pretty well in a lot of comps, and sometimes just having a 2-speed ability, I don't want to call it game changing. Sometimes it can be, but can be that kind of X factor that lets you snipe off a merc when Cookie comes into play later on. That can give you an advantage or prevent a high priority ability from going off.
No, I totally agree. It is game changing. The 2 speed on that, even though the damage looks so puny in comparison to other moves, 2 speed beats Karen Endurance Aura. 2 speed can beat Samros. There's a lot of situations where Samro, especially if they're running the Burning Blade equipment, which buffs it by +2/+2 when it's attacking, like even if you send a lot of damage at it, it probably survives at like 8 HP or something like that. And it becomes a threat still, even though it's such low HP, because it has this high DPS move at 3 speed with the mirror image, and that can really like wreck an extra merc before it dies. So the cookie can check that and actually punish somebody for having a merc left on sub 10 or below health. Looks like that Hunter Ace is going to queue up the Tavish deck first. And this is, again, we know that EU and NA copy-pasted most of APAC/China's lineup. The one deck that EU decided to change on, which is different from both APAC and China's final list, is this one. So APAC was running Jaina, China were running Baron Geddon, and Hunter Ace and Tice have chosen for that last blue spot to run the Cookie, which I know that Hunter Ace really likes Cookie. It is just a very strong merc on its own, in my opinion, just to get those snipes. And it does have the synergy with the Karen Diablo. But I am a little bit worried about the synergy with the rest of the comp, because Jaina and Baron Geddon kind of fulfill a similar role, which is, after you've beaten their blue openers, they have some reds on the bench, and then you want to come in with a blue and DPS them. Oh, Jaina's featured, even though we're out. I'm happy about that. Okay. Jaina deals DPS.
it's magical, Gia. You can literally say any mercenary you want, and it will magically pop up on the screen. You can try it if you want.
Kurtrus. Millhouse Mana Storm.
Only meta ones is what our producer said. Any merc you want, as long as it's being played. No, because we saw Mutinous yesterday. Mutinous certainly isn't being played. We saw the full Murloc comp.
Did you? Oh my god! There it is. Wait. This is certainly not meta. Okay, what's going on?
I'm a huge fan of Murlocs, so I got hooked up with the sweet graphics. Scaly Taunt's the best ability in the game, and it's not even close.
It is fun to play, very much. Oh, here's Varden now. They're a very powerful merc. Funny story, leading up to this event, we actually had some media that we did prior to the event, and mercs had come out maybe 2 days before this, and we were asked to do an interview, and they were asking us, who's your favorite merc, and like, why? And I said Varden on that day because I had just started playing, and the speed control felt so powerful. If you could set up a cold snap turn and the rest of your opponent's mercs can't move, you just felt like the biggest galaxy brain in the world. But Varden have moved down. They've moved down to one of my least favorite mercs now because the speed control is annoying. It's so good versus so many things. Yeah. But still very powerful, I have to admit.
It's one of those, you love it when you're playing it, you hate it when you're playing against it.
Yeah. And the death rattle on this is also it's like a big point of contention, right? Because it's definitely the only, it's the best equipment for Varden by a long shot, because it disincentivizes you from just sniping them off immediately. But I think that death rattle introduces one of the few non-speed tie related RNG elements into mercs, and that can be very game changing depending on what it freezes. But it looks like we are in the game now. Standard opener from Valera, and Hunter Ace once again shifting it up. He's not going for the Diablo off or in the opener, replaces that with Tavish instead. And I think it's a very smart choice, right? The Diablo version that they're running does have the Soul Stone, but it's still pretty vulnerable to just dying to like Natalie on turn 2. The Tavish is so bulky because you're running Cookie and the rig wiring weapon. So it's 29 extra health and the 32 AoE. Yeah, it's crazy. And the 32 AoE you get on blues with the explosive trap is super powerful against the shadow comp. So already Valera is kind of at a crossroads. What do you target here? I'm honestly considering Tavish. Quick numbers to note for you. If you're running Burning Blade on Samuro, the double strike on the first turn deals 33 damage if it's triggered. So even if he sent everything at Tavish, it'd still have a lot of health on it. And I guess it's for that reason that Valera is going for the Cairn instead. Probably a more sound decision. Just barely survives though, which is a pretty big deal. Also, we see Valera go for the AoE on Natalie, even though it didn't seem like a particularly important turn to AoE. I think that's mostly meant to accomplish damaging Tavish, so it doesn't get the extra damage buff from aim shot.
So that the reincarnation actually did end up being procced because of just the normal attack from Karen at the end onto the Samuro.
And that can either be a good or a bad thing. I think it's probably a bad thing when your opponent has very fast blue speeds that can kill the Cairn before Earth Stomp, because the difference between 6 health Cairn and like 40 health Cairn, if you are now playing on this Cairn that doesn't have or that's been patched, right, is that the 40 gives you a higher chance of being able to get an Earth Stomp off. Whereas 6 and 40, like, you're probably gonna endurance aura and beat whatever moves and let that go off no matter what. It's a bit close though.
Yeah, but with the Diablo's effectiveness goes down quite a bit with Cairn being the focus in this early portions, right? So when Diablo does come down, you don't have access to that, the aura plus stomp combination at any point in the game, which I think makes Diablo much weaker.
It does, but perhaps if Hunterys can defend the Varden, that's still some slow you can get, plus the regular Diablo ability. And Varden's looking very healthy here because Hunterys has just gotten rid of the Samuro. That is not going to kill the Varden anymore. And Diablo for Valera is very difficult to set up here as well, so he's just putting down his own Cairn. And because Hunterys got the clean cold snap setup last turn, none of the blues got to move last turn. But it also means that Hunterys did not get to go for the flurry, and so everything is at full speed right now. How can Valera punish this? Super scary because any AoE going to trigger that explosive trap and deal 32 to all blues, but maybe Valera can accept that and then just say, I'm gonna go Benediction with Natalie, so I heal most of that back up. If that's the case, though, it doesn't actually kill the Cairn, which is very important here. You really want to kill it before it goes for the Earth Stomp. The Curse of Weakness is 14 damage on Vol'jin, doubled to 28 on a red, so still short of killing the Cairn. Even if you, say, win the speed tie of Earth Stomp plus Curse of Weakness, only 38. So I think that puts Natalie off of going for Benediction here. But Valera has queued up the Benediction, though, so he, I guess, has a plan for the Cairn living and all of his stuff getting slowed next turn. Nope. Switches back to Natalie skill 1, going for the plan of getting rid of the Cairn, doesn't want to get stomped himself. Fair enough.
What would be the plan if you do leave the Cairn up and get stomped next turn? I feel like that's a pretty big disadvantage.
Yeah, I guess you could kill it that turn, and then when they play Diablo, like the slow has been negated by that point and you're at full speed again. Not sure if it's that terrible, but obviously the super slow on your stuff of Cairn and Varden makes you very weak then to Tavish, who can get the full damage aim shot, presumably if you're super slowed.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the bring now for Hunterys? Again, most of Valera's stuff slightly slowed by the Varden, but because it's Natalie and Vol'jin, they're still fast enough to go for Diablo, and that makes the Fire Stomp look, quite a bit weaker here. the upside of Diablo is that Valeera doesn't have very much damage to play on Diablo. He has the Curse of Weakness Anathema combo, but both his blues are not guaranteed to survive to do that. And even if they do, that's only 34 damage to Diablo. And Karin, even though he's a protector, doesn't really deal very much DPS. So it looks like Hunter Ace is just going to bring that in here.
Okay. And as far as Mercs on the bench, Hunter Ace does have like the slight health advantage. Barden dying as well will be able to, if it ever becomes the focus, right? Which is not necessarily the case with these next couple turns. Then that's going to be another advantage for Hunter Ace, because it's going to be one of these mercenaries that just doesn't get to act the following turn.
So Valeera's first instinct here was to go for the AoE combo of Curse of Weakness plus Anathema, which is again 34 damage, 68 on reds. But he quickly realized if Hunter Ace goes for Explosive Trap, then his blues are insta-dead. That's not always a bad thing. You can think, am I willing to trade these mercs for the 34 AoE on everything? Maybe. It would mean Valeera is able to bring in a Rag plus Diablo bench, which would be pretty strong versus the current mercs from Hunter Ace, but Hunter Ace still has 2 mercs on his bench, so I think Valeera is just trying to get more value out of his shadows, and he's going for the Benediction so that they can survive one more turn. Hunter Ace, I think, won a mind game though of... sorry, he did play another Explosive Trap, so I believe that's 2 explosives stacked on the Tavish right now, and that would deal 68 on the blues, 64 on the blues.
That's a lot.
They are very dead. It's basically a Sylvanas here. It would by itself not be enough to kill Cairn, but with all the extra damage that Hunter Ace can get, I think he can prevent this Earth Stomp by going off if he simply has the read that Valeera will finally trigger the Tavish here with an AoE spell, and we see that Valeera has gone for that. So Hunter Ace knows that the Cairn's fastest move is 7 speed here. So like at minimum, a Fire Stomp can go off twice if he just wants to deal 12 damage to the Cairn to make sure that Varden's 6 damage plus the 32 damage he'll get from 2 Explosive Traps on Tavish would kill the Cairn. I think that's reasonable. But again, he doesn't have the read necessarily that Valeera is going for AoE here.
Looks like he...
Oh, it's Bear Trap.
Bear Trap, okay.
Additional. Oh, I'm sorry. It's only 1 explosive. I thought there were 2 stacked already. That's my bad. So because of that, the breakpoint is not enough to kill Valeera's mercs, and this is the big benefit of him going for the Benediction last turn, just to have them survive, even though they are very squishy right now and looking like prime targets for Cookie.
Oh yeah.
So satisfying.
Cookie. I know. Easily snap off one of these with Cookie. I feel like we've seen it so many times over the course of the event this week.
Like, ever since the change to Cairn, sometimes Cairn just sits there and gives, if there's a Cookie snipe on the first half and second half, just plus 90 health total to all the... It's crazy. But there's 3 things that Hunter Ace wants to snipe here. He himself is slowed by the Earth Stomp, so it's a very intricate choice which thing he decides to snipe here. My guess would be Natalie, because maybe she can go for a Benediction again. And Varden's Death Rattle will be able to kill Vol'jin and Cairn anyway. So I think Snipe Natalie could be the play. You maybe say that, okay, what if Valeera doesn't kill Varden? But then that means the Varden by themselves can go for Flurry, and that would also kill Vol'jin and Cairn, or the first half of Cairn at least. Trying to think of benefits of sniping something else. Of course, if you snipe Karen, you guarantee it takes no action. Because the endurance aura can maybe mess with some things. It's a very difficult position. Okay, goes for the Karen. So Natalie survives and does get the benediction off. But she is very unhealthy once again because of the Fire Stomp. I think that's a clever setup by Hunter's. If he realized that he could put Natalie down to 10 or below once again, if he just plays Fire Stomp, even if there's a benediction, then there's the possibility he gets another cookie snipe. But Valeera also somewhat played around that himself by playing Vulgin skill 1 on Cookie, which means that Natalie can do an action before she gets sniped and maybe even prevent the snipe.
Yeah, it worked out quite well.
It's a tough one for Valeera. He can go for Diablo here and just try to go for the big Fire Stomp combo. It would be some flips though, because Varden still has a 5-speed move. So Valeera looks like is going to go for Rag here in order to snipe off Diablo using Meteor, you would have to assume. But it's not a full snipe, right? It's only 50 damage. And even with the Natalie being able to hit Diablo 2, potentially, would not kill it. So Valeera goes back to the Diablo move. And I guess this would imply an Endurance Aura and try and win 50-50. But he's moved to going for Doom Charge instead, slowing Cookie. But that's not good because Cookie's already slowed, right? Like, even though the deck tracker said only one thing's on 7, all of those moves should be slower.
Yeah. And it is Hunter Ace's plan here going to be to try and snipe this Karen off before the combo is able to go off if he expects that Valeera won't go for it this turn.
I mean, if I were Huntress, I wouldn't make that read. I think Valeera is supposed to go for the combo. Like, the flip is Varden can either go for Ice Lance to stop the Diablo before the Endurance Aura goes off, or Varden can go for just Flurry as the safer play, and that would remove one more Fire Stomp from the total. But yeah, Valeera did go for the combo. And like, obviously this is a terrible position, even if he wins, and he did win.
Yeah.
I think Huntress has this in the bag, and he gets the Cookie Snipe in the end after all. That's insane. Because the Cookie was slowed, it moved at the end of the turn and got to kill the Karen. Very nicely calculated.
I will say, I've sniped a fair amount of cookies in my life.
I've eaten a fair amount in my life.
Well, no, that's what I mean. Sniping a cookie IRL is eating it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that metaphor really just did not land with me. I'm so sorry.
You're not caught up on your Hearthstone cookie metaphors? Come on.
Nope.
That's literally all I've been doing for the past 2 days, casting Mercenaries, is cookie puns and memes and metaphors. Cookie is life, and cookies are life.
Good in VGs too, so I don't blame you. So here we have Valeera attempting to deny the Cookie Snipe for additional health on his Mercs by healing the Natalie, which could potentially be game deciding here. We have a very even board state, honestly, if you disregard the blues. There is more health on Hunter Ace's blue, but there is more health on Valeera's Diablo. And that additional health potentially denies Hunter Ace a breakpoint of going for Meteor to kill it off immediately. Whereas Hunter Ace's Diablo can die to Apocalypse Meteor, because the Apocalypse will... I mean, it's already green, so the Meteor already deals 50, but yeah, it's 74 total. Hunter Ace gets the flip, though, which is big. That means that the Diablo survives.
Uh-oh.
And that's got to be the game. Cookie kills Rag here. GG.
Yep. Yep. All right. 2-1 now. Europe finally puts themselves on the board. Makes the series close. I think we've seen like more sweeps than not in Mercenaries thus far. It's at least, you know, in the ones that I've cast over the past couple of days, I think only one match that I've watched has been not a sweep in one direction. I mean, your team had the double match against China where it was sweeps back and forth, which was very bizarre.
Yeah, I giga through in the second series, man. Mercs is hard, dude. It's so hard. I mean,
yeah.
I played a fair amount of Constructed and BGs. I honestly think this game is more difficult than both combined. And okay, I can see in chat a lot of people are saying coin flip, coin flip, coin flip. There are flips and there is some RNG in Mercs, but I genuinely believe it's like obvious that it's far less than Constructed and Battlegrounds. I'm not saying it makes it the superior one, but you cannot say that Mercs is more RNG because you have speed ties and then you have certain abilities that can target random Mercs, but Constructed has draw RNG, you have discover, you have random targeting, you have created by, all of that. And then BGs, you have like Tavern RNG, you have what's offered to you by your triples and all of that. Mercs has very distinct and discrete cases where the 50-50s matter a lot, and that can make it feel bad when you lose them. But you are almost always in a position where you don't have to take the 50-50. You can take an alternate line which says, if I think they're going to go for the 50-50, is there something I can do to punish that even in the worst case scenario? And I think Hunter Ace is one of the best players in that instance, right? Like, he has consistently been going for weird openers, taking our own decks basically, and doing things that I didn't know that they could do. Like, even versus EU's lineup on day one, where they had admittedly what looked like weaker decks, they were just going for openers that Surrender and I had never seen before, strategies that were mostly done off the fly. Hunter Ace was winging it a lot, but he's a very, very smart kid. He can figure out a strategy that can punish what is expected. And perhaps because we were running very meta decks, they were able to abuse that. And so far, Hunter Ace has done that once again versus Valera by starting with Tavish in a deck that is built to start Diablo Cairn.
And all of that whole spiel should mean, the people that are saying it, even more. Because you lost a 1v1 Mercenary 50-50 to decide a series. Not even just a game. Not even just a specific turn, right? An entire series earlier.
But,
so
I mean, even though that did come down to flips in the end, there were points where I absolutely could have gotten an edge in the earlier turns. Looking back on it, discussing with Surrender, I found some misplays from me. I think Luna also recognized that she could have played some of the later turns that I gave her that opening because I misplayed, right? She could have gotten herself in 100% position to win. But it's kind of like, it's so easy to throw in Mercs. And like, if you throw back and forth, sometimes it can come down to a very, very close tie at the end. And, you know, I just think the mode is very deep. Like, we have the fortune of being able to play on super accounts where everything is maxed, so we can test in an environment where there's a level playing field. And I expect that, you know, as more people do their dailies, in a few months, like, max Mercs will become the meta at the top of the high MMR ladder of Mercs. And we're just going to keep seeing more and more iterations of these comps, clever lineup building, etc., etc.
was there anything in the think tank as far as comps go that you and Surrender were practicing that didn't quite make the cut? Maybe something a little bit out there?
Oh my god, I have a funny story. So we had the resubmit, right? And we were like, okay, almost certainly people are gonna copy paste our lineup / China's lineup. Basically the non-Cairn Diablo deck, the MAMC as we've been calling it. And so we're like, how can we beat our own deck? And at first, as a meme, Surrender brought up, what if we run Thrall? Thrall with the Doomhammer at max is 15 attack, Wind Fury, right? And the first ability buffs itself up to 20 attack, Wind Fury. So that is 80 damage to a green Merc. That is a 1-turn kill on Sylvanas. It's a 1-turn kill on Samuro, even if they're running Cookie. And we're like, oh my god, did we just break the meta? Do we play this? We're like, we can replace our Ragnaros with this. It's just faster. And then when we tested it, it was like, oh wait, Thrall is so squishy. It just dies. Maybe there's a way to make it work. Everything with Mercs is like, if you just find the right synergy, maybe we can make this work, right? There's still more testing to be done. Like Surrender was saying, if we open Thrall with Vol'jin Samuro in the opener, maybe we can win the mirror, right? Because we can kill both their Samuro and the Vol'jin on turn 1, whereas they can only choose to kill our Vol'jin or our Thrall. But we found out that it doesn't necessarily matter killing both of those at the same time, because it allows them to then go Karen Diablo at the same time, and then our bench is weaker because we're not running Ragnaros and our Thrall is already dead by that point. But like things like that, even out of whack things, are very possible in Mercs. I think if you asked people maybe 2-3 weeks ago, is Mukla Anduin ever a thing? They might have laughed at you and said, where's the synergy there? But they found Malfurion. The deck became really powerful. It became the meta for this. When I first brought up the idea of Sylvanas to Surrender, he said it's pretty weak. He was beating me when I was playing that deck at first, but it was because I hadn't figured out how to play it yet correctly. And then as we kept testing and getting better, because both people playing mind games with each other, you just kind of build up this experience and you learn openers, you learn pan-outs. It's honestly a lot like chess, not that I play chess very well. But, you know, like the more experience you have, it very much helps, right? And as we got better and better, we found that this deck, when played correctly, can beat Shadow Samuro very consistently. But we've got a game. Sorry for going on such a long tangent. This is now Nature versus Shadow Samuro. And again, Tice has full knowledge what Valera is running, so he can choose to go for an alternate opener. But I honestly think even if you go for standard opener here, which is Samuro, Brucon, Malfurion, you are a slight favorite versus the Samuro comp when played correctly. But it looks like Tice might be going for Cookie Diablo. We saw them go for this opener against us actually on day 1. It was Surrender who faced it, but when we reviewed together, it just kind of made sense, right? Because Cookie is guaranteed to let your Samuro attack twice. Your Diablo will probably get targeted, but then you still have Samuro, and that can snipe off whichever blue you didn't kill on turn 1.
Yeah. It's just a nice way to get these blues off the board.
Mm-hmm. We ended up losing from this position as Shadow Samuro versus this opener from Nature Samuro. I do believe there's a way to beat this though, maybe when played correctly, because I think you're supposed to go after Diablo here. You won't immediately kill it, I don't think, but you probably put it at a health total where you can board in Ragnaros and then kill it then. Looks like Valera's going after Cookie, which I'm super interested to see. I cannot call anything a misplay or strictly worse because there's just so many lines that are unexplored. This opener from Tice is unexplored. I'm just excited. How's it gonna work?
Yeah, you said you played against it, but I doubt that there's been much practice with it except in testing. I mean, obviously, ladder is a completely different environment, right? Because you're limited to the confines of whatever metagame you're playing against, and it's all about trying to hard counter that instead of having to have these sort of well-rounded lineups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ladder as well. People will almost always just go for standard openers because they don't know what they're facing, right? So you're just going to get used to patterns that don't necessarily help you when you have to think on the fly here. And Valera has gone for sort of a hybrid approach where he has put damage on Diablo, but he's also cleverly used the Vol'jin skill 1 to slow Cookie for the next turn. Cookie will always move before Vol'jin in that instance, so you're guaranteed to make it slower for the following turn. Makes a lot of sense, I think. And because he knows his Vol'jin is dead, might as well just get that one skill on something that's relevant to slow. He boards in Cairn. I honestly thought it would be Ragnaros to try and snipe, but it is still quite slow. Like, even the slowed Cookie beats the Meteor, so sure, Cairn makes a lot of sense as well. Can go for the Earth Stomp, but can Tice punish this somehow? Because the Cookie's slowed, it can't trigger the Samuro double strike, and all the Samuros here are running Burning Blade, not Mirror, so their DPS is quite low when the double strike is not triggered. Looks like Valeera's going for Mirror of his own, though. Maybe just to not take retaliation damage on the Samuros. It's really starting to stack up now that both Samuros are at 20 attack. And he's queued up the Benediction on the Natalie. I think that's fine. Like, Natalie looks pretty dead from this board state if Tice chooses it. So sometimes you kind of go, alright, this Merc is probably dead. If my opponent does something I don't expect and leaves it alive, I'm going to do the biggest punish for them, and that, in this instance, is probably Benediction.
Yeah.
Okay, goes after Natalie. I'm very worried about this, because if she dies here, and she did, then it's insta-Diablo, right? Like, things have been slowed. Yeah. Yeah, the Natalie was just sitting there as bait again, right? You would expect sometimes that they just don't kill the Natalie because they're scared of you boarding in Diablo while two of your mercs are slowed. That's why Valeera went for Benediction. If my Natalie's alive, let me heal the rest of it so that she becomes a threat again on the next turn. Tice did go for the kill here, but I think this maybe puts him in a worse position even, because what do you even board in here? My guess would be Cairn, so you try to win the Endurance or a flip, but everything else is taking so much damage from the combo.
Even if you win the Endurance or a flip, like, what's the upside with just Samuro Cookie onboarded in that case?
Well, you can
as opposed to like Diablo on the other side.
You can, if you win the Endurance or a flip, your Cookie speed goes down to, faster than the other Endurance or again, and so does the other Samuro. So you can try and kill Diablo here, but as I'm counting up the damage, it's not enough to get the kill. Trick for calculating Samuro damage on double strike if you're running Burning Blade. It's whatever the starting attack is times 2 plus 11. So 51 because it's at 20 here. And Cookie for another 10, 61. Doesn't kill Diablo. Doesn't kill Cairn either, because that 60 would double to, or like the 10 damage doubles to 70. And like, if you kill the Samuro, I think Valeera is totally fine with that because your Samuro takes retaliation damage. So I just don't see this panning out as a good turn for Tice. Maybe he just goes for a stomp himself, try and set up for the next turn. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, realizing that there's no better options.
Oh yeah, but he played Diablo in the opener, so this just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Like, the slow is not that relevant. Brucon can come in though with active Chain Lightning before, not before Endurance Aura though, which means that, what does it mean? Like, maybe you can prevent the Cairn from moving this turn? Is that enough to win the game? Unsure. Very unsure.
With just Malfurion on the bench.
Malf is like very low DPS. I'm not really seeing it. But Malf has almost no synergy left, right? There's slight synergy with Cairn Earthstomp. But because he's lost Cookie, he's lost, or like Brucon cannot come down at the same time as Malf, it feels pretty grim.
Yeah.
But I guess the one upshot for Malf is that it probably survives this turn, and your Samuro probably dies this turn. So maybe in that instance, you can board in the Brukan, and if the Malf lives, you have the sped up Chain Lightning for the next turn if need be. And I'm saying that the Malf probably lives because Tice has Endurance Aura for himself this turn, and that can eat up the Samuro damage from Valera if need be. It is a bit of a waste, though, the speed up effect of it. The endurance is more for the taunt, honestly. Because the speed up, Tice doesn't need it. All of his moves are already faster than Valera's because Valera got stomped last turn. But again, because Malfurion is so low DPS, there's not really a big punish for being slowed here. You can't snipe Diablo, you can't snipe Samuro, especially with the taunt in the way.
Looking grim.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at this damage. Oh, yeah. 10.
Okay. One off! Killing the Karen, and so he has to commit his Karen attack as well. And that means no Endurance Aura, and that means Malf tanks a lot of damage. And perhaps the worst part is that Tice's Samuro is a sitting duck. Well, technically it can still get, 31 damage from the image down, but I feel like if you had the space to play Brukan here with a sped up Muddy Footing or a sped up Chain Lightning, that might be more relevant on this board state. Okay, well, Valera has Endurance Aura Fire Stomp combo available to himself, but he should know that Tice's moves go under the aura. Like other than Samuro, which could be a flip.
Yeah.
And it's probably still worth it because I don't think the Karen will survive the turn necessarily to go for Fire Stomp. So you're basically just playing Aura to try and have the Karen do something relevant before it dies. The taunt could be pretty important to stop Samuro from hitting something a bit more threatening like Diablo or the opposing Samuro. So let's say that Tice plays skill 1 Malfurion, skill 2 Karen, and then Valera wins the Aura versus Mirror Image flip. Means that Samuro's dead, and there's like only one stomp on the minions. Sorry, there's 2 stomps. I have to be specific. I meant fire stomp in that situation.
Yeah.
All right. Pretty interesting. But this feels like a lock for Valera still because all his stuff is unhealthy. They are fast though, and the Malf is healing. Kind of forgot about that. The Earth Stomp was a nature spell, but right now there's only one nature spell left to Tice. And because the Samuro for Valera is at 26, it's just short of Malf being able to snipe it with the Cenarian Surge. He can snipe it with the Roots though. That would deal 32 damage. If you're going for a snipe, you'd probably rather it be on the Diablo, but the numbers just don't work out very nicely for Tice here, do they?
No, and like even if you can get a snipe or Brag that just came off the bench, still quite healthy, but Tice still does have Brukan on the bench.
That's true. Brukan, I actually don't know. I mean, it probably beats Ragnaros in a 1v1 if Tice can somehow engineer that situation, because Brukan can spam the lightning bolt. Crucially though, Chain Lightning doesn't actually deal that much damage if there's only one Merc on board. It only has one target and it doesn't repeat on itself. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there, because it feels like Tice's Karen is not dying for a long time. Okay, goes for protecting his own Samuro. Okay, pretty clever, kills the Diablo, but has to lose his Malfurion in the process.
Now
So
it has a
Brukan comes
Merc
down.
advantage, and like you said, Brukan should be able to match against this Rag pretty safely.
Tice could be turning this one around. And the important thing is that Valera used the mirror image on Samuro last turn, whereas Tice, his mirror image is still active. So if he wants, he can snipe the Samuro before it does anything, and I believe that should give Tice 100% lock on this game. Because if you leave Samuro up and it somehow kills your Brukan if you get too greedy, that's like the one way you can lose. Although I suppose it never really kills it here because there's no way to trigger the double strike. So yeah, Tice can take almost any turn and win from here, most likely. I think the play for Tice's image, Samuro, just play a Lightning Bolt, play like Earth Stomp. Oh, he's going after Rag. Okay, this probably wins too. Yeah, Chain Lightning is 100%. Oh yeah, sorry. He just found immediate lethal.
Yeah.
But that was 100%, maybe in 2 turns as well.
All right. Well, that looked a little bit shaky for Tice towards the middle. But honestly, despite the Malfurion not seeming like that strong of a pick going into that, second to last board state, it actually did end up providing a good amount of sustain, and it survived for long enough to actually have some effect and let Tice get some setups to win the game. Oh, look! I said it, and it popped up on the screen!
Nice one, TJ. You've summoned him. These stats are the non-maxed stats, by the way. So for anyone who doesn't know, if you get a Merc to level 30 and all their abilities and equipment to max level, they gain an additional +1/+5. So that's why all the Malfurions you've been seeing have 7 attack. And, 73 is the base health, but every Malfurion deck in this tourney left is also running Cookie. So you're probably more used to seeing Malfurion at 82 instead of 73. And that additional health is pretty relevant to survive some breakpoints in the early turns. Like, Cookie really made the nature comp stronger with its introduction, just because your most threatening sustain mercs are able to last for an additional turn. I said Cookie.
Yep. You said it, it pops up. It's as easy as that.
So what's your favorite type of Cookie to snipe, TJ?
IRL, or are we talking portraits here?
IRL. And by type, I mean flavor, I guess.
White chocolate chip macadamia nut cookies. Oh. Just the best. Nothing compares. But I don't discriminate against any type of cookie. All cookies are good.
So all portraits are good?
There's some that are not good. Like oatmeal raisin.
No, I love oatmeal cookies.
Well, okay, oatmeal cookies, yes, sure. Like oatmeal as a base, that's fine, right? But oatmeal raisin specifically, like oatmeal cookies, you get the added texture, right? Which is a nice, pleasant experience. But if you just throw raisins in there, you gotta give me something else. Give me some type of nut, or maybe some chocolate chips.
Oh, I see.
Alongside of it, but not just raisins.
So you're not against raisins, because I know some people really hate raisins. They will not touch anything with them, but it's more like you want something alongside the raisins.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Because I do enjoy raisins myself. I'm a raisin enjoyer.
Yeah, I mean, I'll eat a raisin or 60 by themselves, but in an oatmeal cookie, that's wasted real estate.
Fair enough. There's only so much you can jam in there before you lose the perfect ratio of the texture. That's so important.
Exactly. I'm glad you understand. A fellow cookie connoisseur.
Indeed.
In multiple ways, actually.
We've arrived at the Shadow Samuro mirror to decide the match. I believe EU versus Americas, when they played their series yesterday, at least one of them was decided by the Diablo opener deck mirror. But in this pan out, the Samros or Shadow Samros were the ones that could not get the win. So here we are again. If both players go for standard openers, we are going to watch the possibility of speed ties over and over unless one player decides to break the standard pattern. Or maybe Tice can go for a different opener once again. Like last game, he went for the cookie alongside Diablo Samro, and that worked out nicely. I couldn't identify it, honestly. I thought he was losing throughout the mid game, but swept that one back very nicely. But I don't think that opener necessarily works here. If you have to break up Vol'jin and Natalie, their overall power level goes down by a lot. So I think this last Merc for Tice should be Natalie. If you go Diablo here, you could say it's good. 2 greens versus 2 blues. But the crucial thing is that Vol'jin's first skill has the slow ability, right? So if their Vol'jin slows your Vol'jin, and they're always going to target Vol'jin. So by that, I mean, if their Vol'jin goes first, you lose an entire Vol'jin and don't have a way to trigger your Samuro to trade their Vol'jin off, which is a complete disaster. So Tice is going for the Natalie, and this means that even if the Valeera's Vol'jin gets to slow one of these minions first, one of the Mercs first, he at least has a different Merc to make sure that Samuro can go twice and kill Vol'jin all at once.
And you think the openers are going to be exactly the same?
I think so. I've made a mistake before. I used to think that going Natalie AoE on turn 1 made a lot of sense if you're gonna play Karen turn 2 and try to get Benediction off. But I recently realized, because China punished me for making that play, is that if you play Natalie skill 1 and just keep your Anathema instead of Benediction, you actually do get to kill the first half of Karen in one shot if your Samuro survives alongside Natalie, and the Samuro is at 20 attack by that point. So pretty important in that case. So skill 1 here always kills off the Vol'jin. Yeah, both people just shocking Natalie for the next turn. This is the standard way to play the openers for both. And that slow on Natalie for the following turn is very important now, because both players, after they board in Cairn, do not have a way to trigger Samuro double strike. Is there a next level juke that you can do here if you expect them to bring in Cairn? Do you ever go like, have a rag that'll kill your Samuro?
Oh, okay.
Ooh!
Diablo, perhaps?
I don't know about that one. Isn't
Imagine
that just...
if they both went Diablo.
That'd be fun. There's just so many permutations. I don't know if this matches up that well against a Cairn, though. I mean, like, obviously the Cairn isn't dealing a lot of damage to Diablo, but the Samuro is gonna deal 22 with the Mirror, and then the Cairn will deal 20 with the Stomp. And what's Diablo doing this turn? 24 to something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of it. But again, I've not played this the matchup this way, so perhaps Valeera has some type of next level strat that I have yet to recognize.
Well, if Cairn is the expected board for that specific situation, he's got to have some type of plan to throw Diablo out there.
Certainly. I'm just not really seeing it. I guess Diablo allows Valeera to snipe Natalie here. If you go mirror image, that's 22 doubled to 44, so the Natalie will be alive at 19. That's within range of Diablo Firestomp / Apocalypse. But you do have to, if you think they're going for Endurance Aura, you have to go for a speed tie. And I don't know if that's necessarily a worry, though. I feel like Tice would go Earth Stomp here. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Both players go for Whirling Blade instead. Interesting. Tice goes for Anathema, whereas Valera went for the Beam in order to deal more DPS to Karin and try and have that DPS still live for the next turn. Because, again, after you use Anathema, it's going to transform into Benediction, which weakens skill 1 of Natalie. The big thing here, though, is, Tice did Earth Stomp, so he gets to dictate this entire turn before Valera does anything. And that Diablo is dead to Samuro. Guaranteed, if Tice wants it. And if I were Tice, I would want that. I think he might go for Speed Momentum, as Tice calls it here, just to get the taunt on the Karin. To maybe prevent Samuro from going into Natalie or something like that. And then Tice can kill the Diablo with his Samuro and play Benediction with his own Natalie, get everything healthy again. That's the upshot of going for Anathema the previous turn.
And sort of reset the board state and really essentially negate the Diablo.
Yeah.
From Valera would have not really accomplished much as a deviation from the norm here for Valera if that were going to be the case.
Yeah, not seeing it. I guess though, if Tice focuses Diablo, it means that Natalie is still alive this turn. So perhaps the trade-off is the Karin. Oh, wait, he kills Natalie instead of Diablo. Oh, okay. I didn't see that coming, but I mean, I guess he could do it next turn, but now there's just a Karin, right? So, like, Natalie is 4 speed, and that cannot just snipe Diablo before Endurance Aura, and there's just, oh my god, it looks like speed ties galore again, TJ.
Yeah. But this was a conscious decision, right? There was an opportunity for Tice to just get the Diablo off the board that turn. Instead, decided to focus Natalie, and now has put himself in this position.
I wonder how big of a punish it actually is if Tice loses the speed tie. The Diablo will go off 4 times, 48 damage on Natalie, and 24 to everything else. Perfectly kills off the opposing Karin, which is a big deal because Tice does not get to take his action with that Karin. So I think he can have the read that it's going to be an Endurance Aura flip here. So he should go for his own Aura and try to kill that Diablo before it goes for the big Stomp-a-Domp. That can be accomplished with Samuro skill 3 if he would rather, say, start lasering the Karin with his Natalie. Here we go! Okay. He did win the flip and he went for the AoE with Samuro. That possibly just saved Tice here.
So now that things have played out, what do you think of the Diablo over Karin on that first mercenary replacement?
Like, that pan out obviously didn't look great, but Tice didn't actually go for a guaranteed kill on it immediately, so then it had a window to maybe do okay. With Mercs, it's so hard to just say right on the spot, this is wrong. Because after every turn, when you play a Merc, there's gonna be so many branching decisions, so many ways it could twist and turn. Like, with Surrender, I was playing catch, we were throwing back and forth, and that made us think, oh, if you play that, then this move is good, but what if you threw and I threw too? And then we just got stuck in this loop of thinking we made the right play. It's kind of crazy. Okay, Stomp into Benny. I do like to call them Benny and Anna for short. But the slow is a big deal.
You never played World of Warcraft, right?
No.
Okay.
Feel free to
Benediction
judge
and
me.
Anathema were like it was a single epic staff that you got from like this quest line, this like super endgame quest line that switched between basically offense. You could essentially use it, tap it, right, and to switch between offense and defense. So it's really cool.
Yeah,
It's
cool how they incorporated
thematically
that.
implemented it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so even though Valera is at an advantage at this current board, obviously Tai still has 2 Mercs on the bench, his own Diablo and a Ragnaros, which should be, very good, even though there's a Rag for Valera to kill the Diablo. Like, obviously, you have your own Rag and can snipe that. As long as the Samuro doesn't really come into play that much anymore. So I wonder if Valera should ever go for a Giga high roll play here, because if you send the Samuro into Natalie, it's dealing 48, which would put the Natalie to 25, and that's not enough for Die Insect. So, okay, sorry. What I was thinking of the high roll play doesn't even work here.
Get the Die Insects rolling.
Yeah. I mean, when you're this behind, sometimes you have to take big risks like that.
Yeah.
But the option simply wasn't there, right? Because Natalie would have survived the Die Insect, so at most it could have just killed Samuro. So yeah, can play Diablo to make sure you kill the Rag before it does anything. Everything's pretty slow here because of the Stomp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Natalie did just use Anna, so now she's on Benny, and her skill 1 is only dealing 10, doubled to 20 on a red. So that's not actually enough to kill Rag just with Diablo's 24 from Apocalypse. So he would have to also attack it with Cairn or play his own Stomp. And he doesn't have Stomp available, so you probably just send everything into the Rag. Just don't let it attack. It's fine if your stuff gets slowed because, they have just second half Cairn and you have nothing. And you have, probably definitely enough mercs to get the job done. It's only the Rag that can maybe juke this somehow. And even then, even if he gets perfect Die Insects, I still don't know if it gets the job done.
Yeah, it seems like a very difficult game for Tice to lose from this point on. I mean, even if perfect Die Insects were to come out, if Valera could maneuver a situation, would still take some damage, and then there's a Rag still on the bench for Tice to be able to come in and theoretically finish things out.
You're totally right. The Die Insects only deals 22, so let's be generous, right? Let's say Tice completely passes his turn. Valera goes Earth Stomp into Die Insect. It still only kills Natalie.
Yeah.
And that is the first series. Tice popping off just a little bit, well deserved. It was a nail biter at the end there, or at the middle there. Because I really didn't know what the plan was with boarding in Diablo over Cairn after your Vol'jin dies. Mercs is so new that we're still trying to create terminology, but something I've taken to is there's this other Mercs caster, Mullahu, who has done a lot of work for community tournaments for attack mode. He helped quite a bit with my prep, and he uses this term P4 for the first Merc that you board in after the first Merc from your opening comp dies. So it's very standard for P4 in the Shadow Samuro mirror to be Cairn. And I've just not seen playing Diablo P4 into their Cairn ever work out.
Well, add another one to that list because it didn't work out again. Just like in Constructed, where Libram Paladin just seems to never win.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, that was a good series for Europe, to be honest. And I know you had the round robin. I know there's been some craziness with the mercenary matches over the past couple of days, right? They
right.
Maybe has not been the smoothest experience, but from your perspective, who would you say out of the 3 Mercenaries teams that are remaining seems to be on point right now?
I think Hunter's is an incredible player. His instincts, crazy. Like I said this a while ago, but I just think he has so much natural talent for any strategy game. I mean, we know this from Constructed. He's a former world champion. I definitely think he started prep later than me and just got better at the game much quicker than me. I'm very jealous, but I know when to accept that, you know, there are things that people are naturally good at, but Mercs is something you can work on if you put in the time. I do think that the earlier prep that I started with, I'm just assuming, okay, maybe they did start prep super early. I'm just under the impression that like I was tryharding from the beginning. And I think that's what led to creating this lineup, which became the meta lineup after they were allowed to resubmit. But my instincts are just understanding how the game works, back and forth, playing counters, doing weird openers, predicting what your opponent will do. Hunter's has so much talent for that. It's insane. And aside from that, I think Surrender played amazingly well. I mean, allow me to just praise my partner a bit, I suppose. Like, it's very
You're allowed
smart.
to. I'll permit it.
Like when we would prep together, I said, like, obviously we were both throwing a lot at the beginning, but when, you know, I was asleep, he would be using my account to play versus himself and get both perspectives on different matchups.
Oh, wow.
And he just, I don't have the patience or capability to do that. I need a human being to throw alongside me. And I need to discuss.
To bounce ideas off of, like, at the very least, or do sanity checks, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's that's tough. I've always respected players that can take it to that next level. I personally, I'm in the same boat as you. I can't do it unless there's another human being there with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been cool to see kind of the evolution of things and the players that are willing to be creative and take, I guess, quote unquote risks, right? Deviate from those standard openings or those standard P4s, as you put it. Even Valir there, right? You know, it was a deviation that didn't work out, but I still like the fact that he tried. He tried to gain an edge.
Disclaimer, these were the super accounts I'm referring to that were specifically given to us for practice, so we were allowed to use those for each other, okay?
Okay.
That's all. Not my personal account. Because, yeah, very few people have all maxed mercs. That's just not doable on normal accounts.
Yeah, especially with new mercs being added, right? I know there's a lot that don't have Vicky maxed out quite yet, but that was our first best of 5 for Mercenaries with China versus Europe. We're going to have another one coming up, and it will be our last feature of the day for the Global Invitational. Right. So we're going to go to break. Don't go anywhere. More Mercenaries action here from the Hearthstone Global Invitational right after this.